Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel and another episode of Dumpin' Shays. This is going to be an interesting one because, well, the NHL season is on hold right now. We are going into the Olympics, and of course, we're going to be talking a little bit of both right now. But it won't be a podcast filled with a ton of topics, but really some of the more similar stuff. We're going to get into the Artemi Panarin stuff because, we did make posts about it. We did talk about it, but not in full length. And then we're going to go into the Olympics. A little bit of, previews, if you want to say that. We're still going to have a lot more going into that. I'm not going to take away from the videos I'm going to post. Make sure you go and look at that on all the Instagrams and stuff. But I guess that's a good segue into saying, well, if you haven't already, make sure you go like, subscribe, ring that bell, and comment. I want to hear what all of you have to say, of course. As always, I want to start and try and build a community, as I've been trying to do from the start here for the past couple of months. And I appreciate all your feedback. So let's not waste any more time. Let's get right into the video. And as I said, first, let's start off with the Artemi Panarin trade. Yes, one that I think we were all kind of, maybe surprised about the return for the New York Rangers. But let's go over it quickly here, just so if you missed it, you know right now. Artemi Panarin goes at 50% retained to the LA Kings, so at 5.821 for Liam Greentree, and a third, which is conditional, and a fourth, which is conditional. Now, those conditions are, if the third, better of LA or Dallas's third pick upgrades to a second, better of LA or Columbus in that way, if LA wins a playoff round this year. Now, if they face the Edmonton Oilers, well, maybe it's just going to stay a third. And the fourth, if Los Angeles wins 2 playoff rounds in 2026. So really, it could just turn out to be a third and Liam Greentree, which is very underwhelming in that way. Now, before we get into why it might be a little bit underwhelming, let's just go look over Liam Greentree as a whole. Now, if you haven't already, make sure you go check out my podcast with Chris Peters. We actually broke down this part of the trade and why Liam Greentree is maybe having a little bit of a down season this year compared to last year, why we should have maybe expected more or less, whatever. I think he explains it pretty well. But Liam Greentree is a guy who has a little bit of snarl. Like, this is a big kid, right? He's 6'3". He can score. His hands are good and tight. He's good in those places. 37 games played this year, 48 points, 24 goals. Definitely not the 119-point season from last year in 64 games. Now, that doesn't mean he can't go on an absolute tear down the stretch here and be a guy, maybe not the 119-point guy, but still pretty high. However, it has been underwhelming in that way. Now, Liam Greentree is still a good player. He's still a good prospect, and one that the Rangers believed that could play possibly next year on their lineup, that could step in. Now, we'll see. He's 20 years old, meaning next season he is eligible to play in the NHL or AHL, right? Sometimes it's either the NHL or bust, right? You can't just go to the AHL or the NHL or bust. You can't just go to the AHL. You have to be a certain age, 20 years old. He is right now. But yeah, for the New York Rangers, it's going to be an interesting one. Liam Greentree is a good prospect, but I think a lot of fans were hoping, why didn't we get a first? Why wasn't there more involved in this trade for such a stellar player in Artemi Panarin, who, well, let's be honest, has been so good throughout his career, so consistent. In his time in New York, right, 120 points in one of those years, 92, 96 in the years prior, 89 last season in what was considered a down season because he had 120, but it's still so productive. What the LA Kings get here in a guy like Artemi Panarin is someone who is going to just absolutely change their whole perspective on goal scoring, on playmaking, and their power play. 3 things that they all needed to change, right? Artemi Panarin is not going to score you a ton of goals in this way, and I know that may be crazy considering they had 50, or almost 50, I should say, in the 2024 season and then 37 last season. He can score, but he's mostly a playmaker. And those 3 things that I just listed out there for the LA Kings are so important for them to be able to improve on, right? You can only add so much talent. You can only change so much about your team. Sometimes you do need that big name player, that big star who's going to step in. Now, they do have those guys. Adrian Kempe, good player. Kevin Fiala, good player. Quinton Byfield, still finding his way. Good player, but again, not to, I would say, the extent of an Adrian Kempe. And he can't do it all himself, which is why, 1, they gave him the extension, they need him, and 2, why they went out and got Artemi Panarin. He is going to change this big time. And this is why in the trade, I didn't go so hard on the New York Rangers when I was talking about them. And I gave them a C-. It's so tough to be able to make those trades when Artemi Panarin has a no movement clause, meaning he gets to choose where he wants to go, and then only gave them one spot where he'd like to go. That's really tough for the New York Rangers and Chris Drury to make that happen, right? You're kind of handcuffed, both hands behind your back. It's not one where you're kind of like, okay, see what I can do. No, he was literally handcuffed behind his back, talking to a wall and saying, can I please get this, please? It's not going to happen. It was just that tough for them that you weren't going to get that from the LA Kings. They knew that they were the only team that he wanted to go to. They knew that as a whole, they could give them something of value, but really not too much. They didn't have to dig too far into the cupboard. And again, Liam Greentree, arguably one of their better prospects, if not one of their best prospects going into this season, and still probably was one of the better ones anyway, depending on how you view it. But yeah, like C-, I think that's very fair considering where they were and what they had to deal with. But for the LA Kings, you took advantage of a great situation, right? You gave grade A, easy A. You only have to give up a little bit. You still get them at 50% retained for this season. And after this, shout out to Ken Holland, because not only did he just pounce on this trade and know that he was going to get a good deal, but then he followed it up with an extension, 2 years at $11 million, which is so good for them. And I say this because he was looking for if it was a long-term deal, probably around $50 million. Was he going to get that? I would say 40 to 45 probably altogether. But yeah, the LA Kings, a team who is losing Anze Kopitar this year, you need to replace that. Now Artemi Panarin is not that two-way center who is probably for most of his career been a Selke level guy. No, Artemi Panarin is not that. But he does add that star power. He does add that oomph to a team that is losing the other oomph when you talk about that. So yeah, great deal all around for the LA Kings. Good extension. It's an easy A. And I think you could go higher if you wanted to say A+, honestly. But yeah, I really do like this for the LA Kings. Very solid. There's not really much more to say about this trade, honestly. Like, again, the Rangers were put in a tough spot. Drury, with all the decisions that he's made throughout his career for the Rangers, and I know Rangers fans are pretty sick of him, this was a tough one to deal in. And I don't blame the return. Like, it is what it is. You still get a good prospect. You see how it goes. Your team will likely be in the top 10 for the draft this year. Right now, I think they're at number 3, and I did that on my mock draft rankings. Make sure you go check that out. But yeah, like it is what it is. It sucks, but it is what it is. And for the LA Kings, I mean, yeah, really, really good deal for them. Can't hate it at all. But that will be the one thing that I want to focus on for the NHL. I mean, there's a couple of other things, but we'll eventually get into more of that towards the end of the Olympics, kind of ease our way back into it with the trade deadline coming up, with everything else. But there isn't a ton of rumors right now, considering that everyone's focus is on the Olympics. No one can make trades. There's a freeze. They're still going to have conversations, of course, but you can't do anything. So we'll see how that goes. We'll look into it later, but let's move on to the Olympics. And, almost 2 days, almost 52 minutes, and as I'm reading it right here, 53 seconds, but it will be, it's so exciting to know that we're getting best on best hockey and that we were robbed of this for so long. And yes, the opening ceremonies happened. We now see teams practicing. We see lines being created. And now we look into the games ahead. Yes, coming on February 11th, which is this Wednesday, we get Slovakia versus Finland and Sweden, versus Italy. Now, when it comes to all of these teams and expectations as a whole, I don't think we'll be expecting really too much, I guess, from some of these teams like the Frances of the world or the Italys. But in my standings predictions and my group predictions, I do think there are going to be some questions. And, we'll see this. I can talk about, I'm not going to talk about Group C because that one is going to be after this YouTube video, which you can find on my TikTok or Instagram. But I will, eventually when this comes out, you already know about Group B. So For Group A, I talked about Canada. I said they're going to be undefeated in that group, one with Czechia, Switzerland, and France. Now, when we talk about the two of Czechia and Switzerland, I think those are two nations that, although probably undervalued, will likely surprise a lot of people. When we look at Czechia, not having Pavel Zacha down the middle sucks. Like, their center depth is already not one of the better ones in the tournament, but when you talk about the other pieces on that team, and this is even just aside from their goaltending, which I still think is up in the air between Karl Vejmelka and Lukas Dostal, you still have names like David Pastrnak and Martin Necas on your wings, right? Guys who can still produce and be that good. And then when you look at Switzerland, there's the other side of, yes, you look in net, maybe not the best with Akir Schmid, but when you look at the other names of Jonas Siegenthaler, Roman Josi up front, Timo Meyer, Kevin Fiala, and of course, Nico Hischier, Switzerland could be a team to watch out for to upset. And yeah, I do have Canada, who is probably the gold favorite, if not one of the more favorites just to even medal in gold or silver. They will cause problems, and I don't really think that's much of a question, right? When you talk about a lot of these guys who play internationally outside of the NHL, and what I'm talking about here, they have pride. They're already in Europe. They're already acclimated, right? It might be a little bit easier for that transition off the start. So look for that as well. And then, of course, France. Look, I'm not going to be expecting Pierre-Edouard Bellemare and Alexander Texier to just absolutely carry their nation. But at the same time, will they win a game? No. Will they be very competitive? I don't think so. At the end of the day, it is what it is for them, and I wish I could be like, come on, let's go France. Let's see if they can just pull off an upset. I don't see it happening, especially in that group. And then even we'll talk about the other one here in Italy in Group B, which we can talk about of Finland, Sweden, Slovakia, Italy. That's another interesting group, and one that I think that won't go as planned, as I guess that some people will say. If you think back to the Four Nations tournament, Finland played pretty well. They played Sweden pretty well and won in overtime. If you don't remember, I believe it was Mikael Granlund who actually scored that overtime goal. Could be wrong, but I have Finland coming out on top there, and that's with an extra point against Sweden. I think that they go to extra time to get that point, and that should be a really good one. Now, Slovakia is an interesting one because you have the names like Juraj Slafkovsky, Tomas Tatar, Simon Nemec. There is some NHL caliber, there is that top tier talent, but they don't have the depth to be able to get up there. Now, every team makes the playoff round. They're only the top four get those buys to rest up and see who they're going to get. That doesn't mean that Slovakia won't, have a chance to get to the next round. But when I have them projected at, I believe, 9th, out of the whole tournament of 12, it is a little bit more difficult when you talk about the opponents, right? I do have Czechia being 5th, and I think altogether they're going to get a team like Italy, and it's not going to be close. They're going to move on, no surprise. But yeah, when you look at teams like this, Sweden has been decimated by injuries, and that really puts them in a tough spot because, look, even before the Jonas Brodin or Leo Carlsson injuries, you were still dealing with a lot of other unknowns, right? Gabriel Landeskog is going, but there were questions on him, right? And when we look at even other players, it was just so up in the air for them. And they still have those big names. We're not going to act like they don't have the big guys of Rasmus Dahlin, William Nylander, Adrian Kempe, even in net, Jacob Markstrom, Philip Gustafsson, Jesper Wallstedt. There's so much to love about Team Sweden, and I hope they do well. And maybe it is a little bit of a surprised that I have Finland finishing 1 point ahead of Sweden in a game where they face each other to pretty much face off for the group stage, or the group to win it. Both of them still get that bye, right? They're still going to be those better teams, but all around, I really do like Finland. I think that there's, I talk about it in the video, if you haven't already watched it. Miro Heiskanen was not there at the Four Nations. They missed him big time. That defense is not deep. It is not deep at all. And when you take out Miro Heiskanen, yeah, you still have some names there, but Esa Lindell is not going to be able to do all of that. Like, he is not offensive, and he kind of had to be that a little bit in that tournament. And it was kind of fun to see because he was still producing, right? He was still going to be on that top pair. But now you have that pair back together, guys who are familiar with each other. And now everybody can just kind of move down a spot, right? The depth gets better, right? And that's just, Miro Heiskanen brings a lot more than that. Still good defensively, very good offensively. He's a driver, and you're going to see that. Now, Finland has their own injuries and guys that they're missing, and maybe guys that are on their team that were different from the four nations. But I think altogether, if you get some saves from a guy like Jussi Saros, who it's been a very tough year for him and even Nashville, but just at him as a whole, he hasn't been that solid. I think that Finland has a good chance here to do some damage. And I might be talking about them as this team that's rated like 10th out of 12. No, they're probably and most easily a top 5, top 4 team in this tournament, considering four nations. And all around, Finland should do some damage. And I think that could be up to the teams like USA and Canada. I don't know why that shouldn't be a question. Yeah, maybe to how they were handled at the four nations is a little bit different, but this is also a different play. Right, it can go either way. You never know. But I wanted to talk about the jerseys here for a second. I put this on my Instagram yesterday. And yeah, I mean, I love a lot of these jerseys altogether. Like, if I had any of these, I'd wear them and it'd be really cool. But some people, and you can see it in the comments here, some of them say, like, Finland's kind of not great. Germany's are beautiful. I really like Denmark's. I think they're so different. Latvia's always slick. Sweden always does it so well. Slovakia, I mean, just the best. The design's so good. I like Canada's, which is why they're in fine. I think they could have been better. I really, really love the Four Nations jersey, and I wish they would have done something similar to that. They didn't. That's okay. Switzerland, again, fine. Italy, I think you could debate on them being higher, but it's a fine jersey. But I was just kind of like, I feel like they could have done something better considering that they were hosting. And France's is just straight terrible. I mean, France with lines. Maybe there's more meaning behind it that I don't know about, but they're ugly jerseys. USA so slick. Czechia really, really good. Altogether, just a lot of really solid tarps. I want to touch on them pretty quickly. But then I want to get into the last three things here. On my graphic that I posted, that I will post today, maybe you'll see it before you watch this or not, or listen to this, whatever you're going to do. There are three players that I think will be X factors. And to no surprise, yes, I have Miro Heiskanen here first, who I already talked about, so I won't talk about too much, but there's two other guys, in Philip Grubauer and Nico Hischier, that I'll get into as well, and why they're such big X factors. But, we touched on it here, why Miro Heiskanen is so important to this team. Miro Heiskanen is going to be playing top-end minutes. He's going to be on the ice for these big plays, whether that means offensive or defensive, probably, right? Maybe not the biggest defensive thing, but I think he would. But he's so productive. 46 points this season in the NHL for the Dallas Stars. This is a guy who you want on your team. 55 games played this year. He's been a lot more healthy, playing over 25 minutes a game. And he'll probably get something around that to more in this tournament for Team Finland. So you already have that experience. Young kid, first Olympics. It's so exciting for him. Him missing the Four Nations is really tough. I'm glad that he's here at the Olympics. Finland benefits so much from this. They already have the goaltending. They have the guys up front. The depth isn't there forward-wise or even defense-wise. But if you can get away with that top-end talent, just finishing on chances when you have those big chances, it might be the biggest difference maker here. Second one, Philip Grubauer. Now, at the start of the season, and even over the last bit, I think we were all looking at Philip Grubauer and saying, yeah, like, this guy's done. It's not happening. And you probably would have been right to say this. Like, over his career and even over really just as a whole what he's been able to do, it hasn't been great. Ever since he left Colorado, where he had a 916 and a 922, and I believe either he won a Vezina or was in the Vezina running, it just wasn't great, right? Now, Seattle wasn't the best team to start off, but his numbers were just absolutely atrocious. Now, all of a sudden, at 34 years old in an Olympic year, I think there was a little bit of motivation, and now he has a 916 in 22 games. He's going to surpass last year. He 2.43 goals against, one of the better goals saved above expected in the league. He's 11-6-3. For the first time in a long time, Philip Grubauer has been positive a positive factor for the Seattle Kraken. And a team that I wouldn't say is surprising per se, because that West is just terrible when it comes to the wild card. And even the Pacific is just not great. But for Seattle specifically, they've always been this kind of mid-team in no man's land. But Grubauer has kind of pushed them a little bit above that, right? And when you talk about and like pairing that with a guy like Joey Daccord, it's so much different for Philip Grubauer and the Seattle Kraken, and now Team Germany, who boasts some bigger names like a JJ Peterka, like a Leon Draisaitl, right? These names were always going to be factors, right? Moritz Seider, Tim Stützle, they were always going to be factors. But the biggest question was goaltending for Team Germany. And if you have a guy like Philip Grubauer who is going to be able to play good hockey like this, Germany could be one of those teams to watch out for, which is why I think, yeah, you have so much talent up front, but an X factor for a team like this that doesn't have so much, like for example, USA, Canada, Sweden, Finland, all of those 4 teams, they have enough talent up front to where if they didn't have like the greatest goalie, and this especially goes for Canada considering their goaltending, if they don't have the greatest goalie, they can get away with it, right? Their defense is so good. They have that forwards that can to make those small plays to keep the pucks out. But when it comes to something like this, Philip Grubauer is going to have to be that X factor. They're probably going to be getting peppered on some aspects when their lower lines are on, when their other defense lines are on, because you can't just play Moritz Seider all the time. You can't have Stützle on the ice all the time, or Draisaitl or whatever. They're probably going to have to split some of those guys up considering everything. But he's going to be a massive X factor for that team. And I'm excited to see how he does. I'm glad that he's kind of, having this little resurgence season, and especially an Olympic year. That's so great for him. But yeah, this will be one to watch out for. And then the last thing that I'll touch on for today and this video, and I guess the Olympics, is Nico Hischier. Yeah, I mean, no surprise that a guy who's Selke level, who puts up points and will be their 1C on Team Switzerland is going to be an X factor. But look, when we talk about Switzerland, I think there's so much to keep in mind for this team that, yeah, as I mentioned with those names of the Kevin Fiala, of the, Siegenthalers, the Roman Josis, Nico Hischier is going to be massive on not just one side of the ice, but both sides of the ice. This is a two-way center who's going to be able to make plays, who's going to compete, who's going to score, who's going to be on the PK, the power play, everything. And, when he's averaging about not 28 minutes a game. And when he's averaging about 20-ish minutes a game, so we're going to be talking about like 20 to 23 minutes a game, it's going to be way more than that. Again, no surprise considering when some of these nations don't have every player available like those USAs, Swedens, or Canadas. Yeah, Nico Hischier is going to be a massive factor, a big X factor for their success. Switzerland is one of the teams that I'm expecting to not like maybe surprised, but be one of those nations that is going to give a lot of other nations trouble. They have the pieces to do it. They have the guys to do it. Their depth is good enough. I like their chances. And again, if you saw Group A, you'll know why. I think there's a lot of positive with Swiss here, and I'm excited to see how they do. But that's the last thing I wanted to get into for this podcast, and talk about the Olympics and a little bit of NHL hockey. It's always nice to have that little bit of switch up, but if you have not already, make sure you go like, subscribe, ring that bell, and comment. I want to know what all of you are thinking and feeling for the Olympics right now, and I guess even if it's just the NHL, just let me know about that as well. But until next time, my name is Zach Staden, and we'll be talking soon.